The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
And good morning, Kern County. It is 5 a.m. on this Tuesday morning. I'm Alex Fisher alongside Elena Rusk. And we begin this morning with the latest developments in the trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West. That's the couple accused of killing their two adopted sons, Orrin and Orson. As the prosecution rested their case, the defense is now arguing that prosecutors have nothing but the testimony of a child. The lead defense attorney gave her opening statements in court yesterday. She told jurors, quote, "There are no confessions and there is no forensic evidence. All we have is the story of a 10-year-old boy." Last week, an interview with the West's oldest biological son was played in court. In it, the boy said he saw Orson West's lifeless body in the fall of 2020, months before Orrin and Orson were reported missing. The defense attorney says a witness will testify that coercive interview techniques were used on the boy, and because of that, he was susceptible to false memories. It has been one of our top stories for a little more than a month now, and the potential for a few hot days to accelerate snowmelt, unleashing a heavy flow of water into and out of Isabella Lake, through the Kern River, and then into our communities. But what is the likelihood that we will actually see flooding, and of course, when? 17's Maddie Gannon spoke with forecasters about where we stand right now.
After much anticipation over rapidly melting snow leading to floods this spring and summer, experts say just wait.
In the last month, for example, we've seen about 20% of that snow melt start because we've started to heat up. So we still have a lot of snow left to melt.
In the southern Sierra, where we're watching carefully, our snowpack is up 364%. And that isn't good news because we are expecting warmer temperatures.
17 News chief forecaster Kevin Charette explains last week's cooler temperatures actually led to an increase in snowpack in the southern Sierra, resulting in more snow waiting to melt off and less time for a gradual drip before the weather gets hot.
As we take a look at the long-term forecast here, we could be running out of time in terms of getting that slow melt off that we really need so we don't see flooding around the Kern County area. And you can see long-term here, this is May 13th through the 17th. We are going to see those temperatures rise.
Jessica Chiari from the National Weather Service Hanford says exactly when we may expect floods is still to be determined. But there's a particular forecast that triggers alert.
If we're looking in the valley, consecutive days, meaning 2 or more of 90 degrees, that's kind of our number for us here at the Weather Service.
Charette says historically, June is when Bakersfield really heats up, with the month last year seeing 11 days at 100 degrees or higher and 12 at 90 or above. As of Monday, the water level at Isabella Lake is at about 60% of its capacity.
Maddie Gannon, 17 News.
Bakersfield to the White House today. President Biden hosting congressional leaders at the White House with hopes to find an end to the stalemate over raising the nation's debt limit or face economic catastrophe by June 1st. The high-stakes face-to-face meeting is the first for President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on the issue, with both sides refusing to budge. NBC's Drew Petrimo has more from Washington.
Top leaders from both parties head to the White House today with a crisis over the debt ceiling causing fears of an economic catastrophe. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warns that as soon as June 1st, the government could run out of money to pay federal workers, fund the military, and pay for key programs like Medicaid and Medicare.
The president will have to make some decisions about what to do with the resources that we do have. And there are a variety of different options, but there are no good options.
Right now, Congress is locked in a stalemate over the issue. Republicans in the House passed a plan that would lift the debt ceiling, but only in exchange for steep spending cuts. Over the weekend, 43 Republican senators signed on an open letter saying they too will not vote to raise the government's borrowing limit without cuts.
We're trying to hold the debt hostage to us to agree to some draconian cuts.
The president and congressional Democrats insist Republicans pay the government's bills now and negotiate spending during budget talks later.
Democrats are putting the country in jeopardy. The president, by ignoring to even negotiate.
As the leaders head to the White House, experts say the economy is on shaky grounds. A possible default on the debt, along with rising interest rates and ongoing turmoil among banks, are fueling fears of a recession. As Republicans try to pressure President Biden to negotiate, the president is trying to exert some pressure of his own. On Wednesday, he'll travel to a New York congressional district that Republicans narrowly won last year. It's part of an effort to highlight what the White House says are the true priorities of Republicans in vulnerable districts. Drew Petrimo, NBC News, Washington.
All right, now let's talk about some headlines around the state this morning. There is a new push at the Capitol to lower the legal voting age to 17. State Senator Henry Stern introduced a constitutional amendment he says could reverse low turnout rates for those young voters. He argues extending voting rights to 17-year-olds when they're still living at home instills voting habits early on, making them more likely to continue voting throughout their lifetime. 22 states and the District of Columbia already allow 17-year-olds to vote in the primaries as long as they turn 18 before the general election. California previously tried to adopt that same guideline through Prop 18, which failed in 2020.
5:14 is our time now, and several of our favorite TV shows are now being impacted by the writers' strike. Netflix's Stranger Things, Apple TV's Loot, as well as Marvel's Blade are all among the shows that have shut down production. Some late-night talk shows have also gone dark and are airing reruns. Writers have been picketing outside of studios across LA and New York City since last week. They are asking for higher pay from streaming companies. The last strike happened back in 2007, and some TV shows didn't survive. Now to your 17 Crime Watch, and it has officially been more than a week since 4 people were shot and killed in Mojave. And this morning, there's still no word from investigators on any lead suspects or a motive. 17's Marco Torres walked around the small desert town and spoke to residents, some who say it is frightening to think a mass murderer could still be on the loose.
This is the RV where the Mojave mass shooting took place. 4 people were killed, but they won't be forgotten. The community made this memorial in their honor. Now all that's left are for some answers. A memorial for those slain in the Mojave mass shooting. 31-year-old Darius Canada, 34-year-old Anna Hester, 33-year-old Martina Barraza Jr., and 20-year-old Faith Asbury. The small memorial was put up right in front of the RV where everything happened. One neighbor says he knew Darius and Martina. Martina, he says, was a good person.
You'd be surprised how the community comes together for something like that. As long as they know one person, they'll try to make it fair for the rest and stuff. Because that one lady was pretty loved and known throughout the town.
Who was that one?
Martina. She was, I knew her growing up.
More than a dozen locals I spoke with all said this kind of violence doesn't usually happen here. None of them say they think they're safe with a mass murderer on the loose.
It definitely makes me double think at night before I do stuff to lock up and make sure I don't have any of my personals out where I could become a target.
According to Lieutenant Brandon Routledge with the Sheriff's Office, Mojave residents shouldn't be afraid of a mass murderer on the loose. As for why not, no answer was given. However, he also says everyone should be vigilant and report any suspicious activity to law enforcement.
That no one really talks until there's a reward, you know. There's such a tight circle out here. Everyone knows everyone, so it's kind of hard to speak up on that person if you do know them, because it's wild. You don't just see that out here in the middle of nowhere. Usually you see it in like Texas or something.
If you have any information, please call it in to KCSO through their secret witness line at 322-4040. Reporting for Mojave, Marco Torres, 17 News.
Turning now to your 17 Court Watch, a man charged with first-degree murder and mutilation of a corpse in Ridgecrest will again be examined to determine if he is mentally competent to stand trial. 22-year-old Daniel Gunnarsson arrested 2 years ago after he was found with the dead body of a woman in the garage of his stepfather's home in Ridgecrest. Investigators say Gunnarsson was upset that the woman didn't reciprocate his feelings for her, and they reportedly say he killed her with an ice pick. Gunnarsson previously found incompetent to stand trial in 2021. He was treated at a state hospital and in March of last year was found to have been restored to competency. Records show he is due in court tomorrow for a competency hearing to see if he can stand trial now.
A 20-year-old Bakersfield man is under arrest, accused of sextortion with at least 3 minors. It is a crime that involves private photos and blackmail, and it's becoming a growing problem. 17's Mikhail Armstrong now with a warning for parents.
According to the FBI, sextortion is when an adult contacts a juvenile through technology and convinces them to send sexually explicit photos or videos. The adult then threatens to make the images public if the victim doesn't send more or pay them. And according to BPD Sergeant Robert Pear, the number of these schemes are increasing in Bakersfield and can lead to tragic outcomes.
There's been some tragic consequences as a result of these types of extortion schemes. Where the victims have ultimately committed suicide out of fear of these photographs or videos being released.
Pear says teens are mainly being targeted on social media apps. And cybersecurity specialist Ken Coughlin says he sees this happen most on apps like Snapchat and Instagram.
It really gives the scammer a plethora of information about their target, and they're able to use all of that against them and basically say, look, I can ruin your life in a million different ways. I have all of this information.
He says that is what leads many children to try to deal with the scammers alone.
You know, they're young and scared. They oftentimes don't report it. They don't talk to their parents. They just sort of say, okay, I can make this go away by myself. They only want $50. I'll give it to them. And then it just creates this cycle of violence against the teenager.
County Chief Information Technology Officer Mark Bonaro says as a teen, you can prevent this by not opening attachments from people you don't know and not sharing anything online you wouldn't want there permanently. Then he says parents can prevent this by monitoring apps used by their children and looking out for signs of changed behavior.
Stay as close as you can with your kids. Get as involved as they'll let you in their lives, so you can kind of pick up on any nuanced changes that come up.
Mikhail Armstrong, 17 News.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.